I'm Jennifer Purcell, and welcome to my podcast, Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss, discover, and learn more about the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD and other learning challenges. I do have a website for this podcast, and it is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account for the podcast. They are all under the same name, which is Living with NLD. I also have a YouTube channel for the podcast, which can be found by Googling the title of the podcast, which is Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I would like to tell you about a nonprofit that I use for my research for this podcast. It is called the NLD Project, and I use their blog for my research. They are a nonprofit that is based in New York and is trying to get NVLD back on the DSM, and they provide many resources for people with NVLD on their website. I'll provide you with the website for them in the podcast description. All proceeds from the ads on this podcast will be donated towards the NVLD project. Please feel free to explore the other topics on the podcast, and hopefully you will learn something new from them. I hope you enjoy today's episodes. I also want to mention to you that I just launched my podcast swag on Wednesday of this week and have a page for it on my website, and I will also send you the link to it in the podcast description, and I will also send it to you in the newsletter that I usually send out on Fridays. I am now selling t-shirts, water bottles, and a backpack, and they all have the podcast logo and title on it and the tagline. So I am looking forward to watching the sales and seeing who buys them, and spreading the word more about my podcast. Good morning, and I hope you are enjoying the new podcasts that I created, which, again, if you haven't heard of them, one of them is called Shiro, Be Your Own Hero, and that one was about heroism and inspiring yourself to be your own hero in your life instead of trying to look for others to be your hero or mentors. And then the second one is called Think Out for Your Imagination, and that one is about the imagination I had when I was growing up and how I imagined that I could fold up my house into pocket size and take it with me wherever I wanted. And then the next one is Chats, Barks, and Growls, Combos with Your Pet. That one is probably the most fun one because I get to do my voice. And I get to do Truffle's voice. And just, tell you what I think dogs think throughout the day and what they think about their owners. So that one's fun for me. All right, happy Friday. And so today's episode is going to be about NLD, therapy, and emotions. And this will be speaking from my own experience as usual, and I'll be listing some actually, I don't use any articles in this one. Usually I do. But so have it's basically sorry, got tongue-tied. It's basically about how I've dealt with my emotions in my childhood, preteens, high school, college, and adult years, and how it's differed. A few factors that changed with how I dealt with my emotions was NLD, my childhood sexual abuse, love relationships, and being conned by someone that I thought loved me. I do want to warn you that this could be triggering for you if you or anyone that you love has gone through similar things that I'm discussing today. I've been going through a lot lately, from a 5-month migraine to some family things as well, but I won't go into detail with that because it doesn't really relate to this episode. Um, I'm sharing this with you because it's been bringing up a lot for me from my past that I thought I had dealt with. Um, if you haven't listened to episode 20 from year one yet, you should, because I'm not going to go into all the details again, but this is a huge part of the next 4 episodes. How I dealt with emotions in my childhood. I used to suppress my emotions a lot when I was a child and growing up, and I didn't know that I did this until I got older. I share this with you because I found that this made it hard for me to name or label my emotions when I got older because I wasn't used to feeling, releasing, or expressing them. I was used to bottling up and holding them in. I also didn't know how to ask for what I wanted, so I would always repeat the phrase, "I love you," to my mom when I wanted something. I would usually combine that with standing close to the object or item, or sometimes I would point to it. I bring this up because desire is a positive emotion, and I suppressed all my emotion when I was little because I didn't want anyone to know about the abuse. I didn't want them to know because I thought it was my fault. Little did I know that it wasn't my fault. It was completely my cousin's. I know I'm being vulnerable here, and I trust that you will keep this information private. I also have done these kind of episodes before on this podcast. How I dealt with emotions in preteens. I disclosed with my family 15 years ago about the abuse because I finally realized when I was 12 that I was the only one that could stop it. I knew it was wrong. I also knew that he was the only one that would get into trouble, not me. I also started therapy, which I didn't think I needed to do at first. But this was a very good decision because it gave me several coping skills that helped me with dealing with processing, releasing, letting go of the letting go and expressing my emotions that I didn't have as a childhood. Me as a child. Um, One of these coping mechanisms was to share with my mom about all my triggers because they were pretty constant for me. They happened probably every 5 to 10 minutes, and she wanted me to share them with her even if her door was closed when she was at work, because I needed to be able to know how I could share it with someone other than my therapist. Another coping skill was to lucid dream and write my nightmares in a journal. I had to get them out of my head, otherwise, I would replay them nonstop, and that wasn't going to help either. I eventually learned how to control my dreams by telling myself that I was safe, loved, and that it wasn't never going to happen again. One last coping mechanism that I still use is writing fake letters to people to help me process that what they did that I didn't like. I also use that to help me be more honest with my family and to communicate with my family, because I have learned the hard way that trust is easy to break but hard to earn back and build again. How I dealt with emotions in high school. I started to allow myself to express my emotions more freely once I was in group and individual therapy, because I realized that keeping them bottled up wasn't serving me or my family well at all. One of the lessons I learned from group therapy is how fortunate I was and still am to have a very supportive family and set of friends that will have my back no matter what I need from them. They have been through hell with me more than once. Um, they have stuck with me through the thick and the thin no matter what. Okay, so they have paid for 7 years of therapy and continue to, because They know that I need time to work through my personal things. They also have been there for me wherever I need to talk to them and about everything and everything to them. Um, how I dealt with my emotions in college. I experienced a lot of homesickness in college because I went to UC Berkeley and was used to being at home. I had always been close to my parents and brother, and still am. I did have my brother up there with me in the Bay Area, so that helped. But it was hard to make friends due to NLD. I can remember I would start crying when I was running, which I did 3 times a week, and I didn't care who heard me. I also even considered taking a semester off because I was so emotionally distraught. I did have daily migraines back then for 4 years, but I didn't know what they were. I thought they would end when I would graduate. Little did I know I was wrong. I have always had and still have a supportive family that didn't end in high school. It continued in college and still continues. They were there when I wanted to get tested in college. My parents were there when I needed help with my sociology classes. My mom would help me proof my papers. My dad would make her dinner for her and do the dishes. How I deal with my emotions in adulthood. They were, my parents were there for me also for my first romantic relationship when it fell to pieces. They were there for me too when I had the unfortunate experience with the con artist. Um, and for me now, basically what I try to do is I try to give voice to the voiceless, which is a quote from Ela Gandhi, who is the granddaughter of Mahatma Gandhi. And I guess that what is this is what I'm trying to say in this episode and podcast. Um, I'm sorry that this was a long one and difficult for you to listen to, but basically, before I end, I do try to express my emotions more in my adulthood in terms of letting myself cry if I need to, and letting myself be angry if I need to as well. Something I do frequently when I run. If I'm angry, I try to imagine uh, the face of whomever I'm angry at, and sometimes that's myself. And I just punch the image with my hands. It's kind of like a punching bag, but it's moving as I'm running. So that helps me. So um, I hope that these coping skills that I shared with you um, will help you think of your own, or that you can use them as well. And one other thing that I do sometimes is I go, ugh, or ugh, when I'm frustrated. And that's a good way to let it out, because if you hold it in, and this can be true with any emotion, it's probably going to come out more powerful the longer you hold it in. Um, and that will affect others too, assuming that they're around you, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So, better to let it out in small amounts and rather than bottle it up. Um, you can even scream into a pillow if you don't want anybody to hear you, um, and that helps too. Um, or if you're outside and nobody's around you, throw some rocks. Get your emotions out. Um, so yeah, I hope that was helpful for you in some way. And I know I didn't use any articles today, but that's mostly because I wanted to speak from the heart and be able to give you guys some pointers that I use. But I'm sure there are articles out there about um, other people with NLD or autism or ADHD and how they express their emotions. So yeah, I'll talk to you next Friday. Bye.
As I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you. I do have a website for this podcast. It is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook and Instagram page for this podcast. It is called Living with NLD. I will include the links for those in the description. In conclusion, I would like to hear from my audience. If you know individuals with NLD that I could interview for this podcast, please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. What are you interested in learning about NLD? I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. I would like you to practice journaling about your gifts and differences. Also see if there is a way that you can make that difference become easier for you to do than it originally was. Thank you for listening today, and please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Thank you. Bye.